There's a lot of inconveniences in the life of someone with a disability, but it does get quite disheartening, and to keep pushing for accessibility, it can get really exhausting.
9 years ago, Sarah Jane Stazak woke up paralysed after routine surgery.
When I started using this wheelchair as my mode of transport, I wasn't able to drive, and I live within about 500 metres from a train station, so that gave me the option of being able to get out and about.
But for the last 8 months, she hasn't been able to use the station she relies on.
And now I can't access it during this construction, which is looking at about a 12-month process. My feeling is it would be ideal if they could maintain some sense of accessibility while they were doing the construction.
Ironically, the upgrade is designed to make the station more accessible to meet compliance standards set by the federal government in 2002. Those laws set a target for all stations and stops to be fully accessible by the end of last year.
We would say that across the country we would be at best 50% compliance to those standards across all conveyances for public transport in this country.
For SJ, the construction has added an extra layer of difficulty, forcing her to commute to a further station in order to access public transport.
It's probably adding an extra 10-15 minutes of driving, and then the inconvenience of having to find an accessible parking spot. We're in the vestibule. My wheelchair won't fit through into the carriage, and this is the thoroughfare of where people get on and off, come through to the toilet, and you end up having to take a deep breath and getting very good at acceptance.
You need to have a system like a public transport system that doesn't work for everybody. It's very isolating and can have significant impacts on not only socially but mental health-wise as well.
Recent data shows 73% of Victoria's tram stops are not independently accessible. In New South Wales, that figure is closer to 33% for train and ferry stations. More than 40% of South East Queensland's rail network is not accessible, while in Western Australia, 37% of its train stations don't meet compliance standards. Those state governments say they are committed to improving accessibility.
So this side of the tram tracks is fully accessible. Why did we do one accessible and the other side not accessible?
Nick Morris was a member of Australia's 1996 Paralympic basketball team that won gold. He now runs his own accessibility consultancy in Victoria and argues governments across the country have failed to provide accessible public transport.
All these simple things that actually are the issue at the moment from an infrastructure point of view. Steep ramps, poor handrails, poor lighting for after hours use, poor surfaces with exposed gutters and things like that. We had 20 odd years to do this. It's not a surprise that this thing's come up. And so I feel let down that we haven't made sure that the infrastructure's been updated.
Nick says he's concerned about safety.
I know full well that I would fall out of my chair if I wasn't watching on those gaps. So it's an accident just waiting to happen. It's not just people in wheelchairs, it's the elderly, it's kids, it's families. If I see another stroller being carried upstairs at Flinders Street Station, I'll scream because it's not safe and it's not right.
I get a bit disheartened, and I am somebody that will work out workarounds to make my life function, but it does get exhausting having to do that every day, every minute of the day.
It also demonstrates after 20 years that people haven't thought this through or designed it. Public transport for everybody, you have to ask yourself why. Why do people with disability have to put up with substandard transport options?
Some in the industry believe that the current regulations set out are unachievable and should be made more flexible.
I think if we'd had 200 years, we would have struggled to meet the compliance of those standards. When you look at not just the cost of upgrading the infrastructure, but the cost of shutting the station and the impact on commuters to do those works and to make it fully compliant, the cost would be unrealistic.
In consultation with states and territories, the federal government is conducting a review of the legislation before introducing reforms slated for later this year.
The biggest enemy of getting anything done is to make it perfect, and everybody's been trying to hit 100%, which means we haven't really been able to get it done.
I would say the standards are probably the bare minimum to be achieved. If it was a flexible, market-driven standard. So then if it's market-driven, you're leaving it to service providers to implement, and I'm not sure that would actually occur.
While they wait for the new policy to take shape, commuters want the improvements to come sooner rather than later.
Let's be clear on this. We've had different governments the last 20 years, so none of them have fixed it. They're as bad as each other. But now the buck's got to stop because it's 2023 and we've got to be better than that.
I have hope, but I also have not a huge confidence in the belief that I'm going to see it happen in my day.